Okay, so the reason I do not want a Black History Month is because it is a scrap. It is crumbs. If we look at school, we learn this white caste centric, white caste washed history in school all the way up to college. And even in college, people have to learn these specific degrees just to get the full version of history. Then we can look at our money. On the majority of our money, it's white cast historical figures. Then we can look at these statues and monuments around the country. The majority of them are white cast historical figures. These different street names and city names and even countries, a lot of them are named after white cast historical figures. Same things with these school names, right? With some even being named after Confederate generals. And then you have St. Patrick's Day, you have Columbus Day, you have Washington Day, right? You even have something like Christmas, which has like this white coated Santa. Then you have media representation, all of these, not just general media representation, but these different historical films, many of them high budget. A lot of them are white cast centric, white cast washed, right? Even if we look at the weekdays, they are named after Anglo Saxon deities. So every day is white white history day. Every month is white history month. So even us being given a month, it's still just a scrap. It's still just crumbs. Okay? And then clearly they're using it just to pacify us, since that is the case. And it's sad that they're using that to pacify us because it's like they're almost exploiting our narcissism, right? Exploiting our insecurity. It's like them putting a mirror in our face. So we just focus on that, so we ignore all of these things. And it's like, yes, history is important, but it seems like we are focusing more on like history and fantasy than the present and the future, which is why we get like ocean fires and Texas losing power and New York flooding and these different buildings and infrastructures collapsing and this continued societal corruption and inequality. Like, we wouldn't need Black History Month or these different ethnic centric history months if the full version of history was just taught in schools. Then it wouldn't be needed. So, another issue, this is just an opportunity for politicians and companies and different casteist groups to virtue signal. It's very easy, it's very lazy. It just perpetuates consumerism. I'm sure there's going to be stickers and shirts and all that type of thing, right? So, and then I'm questioning why we even still have these ethnocentric moms, even though we things are still corrupt and there's basically every day is White History Day. We still have made a lot of strides and progress, but we're still keeping these things in place. Like, I almost feel like a special needs charity case. Like, I don't need charity. I don't need handouts. I don't need crumbs. I don't need a pacifier. I want the system overhauled, right? It's almost coming off as divisive to me, which I think is intentional. I know some people will get feel some type of way that there's this month, which I'm starting to feel like maybe there is a reason for that. And it's just all part of this divide and conquer strategy that these political influencers are trying to maintain, right? It just feels all very um, segregated in a way. It's just off. Then they're continuing to use these terms, Black and like African American, which I feel like we should move away from, not just because they are being exploited like by these different cast as African immigrants, like a Trojan horse, where they're trying to claim or take credit or cosplay as us and our history. But these terms are meant to negate our US history and our connection to the US. Okay? They are otherizing, they are foreignizing. Just how we don't use the term European American commonly because we treat them like the default. Okay? They're not the default. Or how African American sounds like we're immigrants. Like that's the terminology we use when someone's like a recent immigrant, but we've have 400 years of roots here. So then lastly, there is really no such thing as black history, as black US history. Um, soon as we all came in contact with each other, we became intertwined. It's kind of like a rope, right? You can look at a rope and you can, if you look closely at it, you can see these different threads, right? Where we can see these specific demographics or populations or experiences. But in the end, it's still just one rope, right? And that's the case that happened here. It's like it's not black or African American history, it's US history. And if you want to look at a specific thread, it would make more sense to say it's Atlantic Creole history or US Creole history and Bantu and Niger Congo. Look at something like jazz. People will try to label that as part of Black history, but the saxophone wasn't from Africa, it was from Europe. Like jazz is literally a Creole culture. It's a Creole genre. Okay, it's U.S. Creole heritage. Like they sang speaking English, a Creole of English. So it's just starting not to make sense. So it's specific skull shape month. It's distinct skull shape month. Like, why are we still using these outdated racial terms and these caste terms to describe our distinct history or contributions? It's almost like people want to put the hardship and challenges and suffering that our originators experienced to the forefront. But that was not inherently genetic. So why are we using these racialized terms? That was that was social. It was a political system, right? Labeling people as black, right? And then I even see people labeling people who are admixed, sometimes very admixed, sometimes even white cast passing as black and part of black history, which again doesn't make sense. They were Creole, they were Atlantic Creoles, they were US Creoles, but they weren't black. That almost diminishes the black cast experience when people are running around calling these different people and figures black, because a lot of the time they wouldn't have been able to have access or those experiences if they look differently. And of course, this is only on the crux that we overhaul the system, including the educational system, right? Get rid of these ethnocentric days, get rid of St. Patrick's Day. What does that even have to do with us? Um, some of these statues and monuments and just teach the full version of history.